Having trouble locating wildlife for photography? Maybe you're in a good spot, but you don't know it because you don't know what to look for. In this video, I'm going to go over some important tips that you need to know for things you should look for when you're out looking for wildlife. Even if you don't see the wildlife, if you see these things, then you'll know you need to come back instead of abandoning the area completely, thinking that there's no wildlife there. Oftentimes, animals are elusive. They come out right at dark or right at daylight, and they don't stay out all day. So if you're looking for animals in the middle of the day, you might not see the animals, but you can use the middle of the day to find an area where animals are frequenting and then come back at a better time when the animals might be out. I'm also going to go over different seasons or different migrational patterns that animals do, or possibly their prey. If you know the migrational patterns of prey, or you know the different seasons where the animals might be during that time of year, it will help you narrow down your search in looking for the signs of the animals. And once you find the signs of the animals, then you can come back and photograph them. The first thing we're going to talk about is the different seasons and where the animals might be during those seasons. If you live in an area where you get a lot of snow in the mountains, then obviously the animals are going to come down from the mountains when you get heavy snow. So your chances of finding a moose or an elk are better in the valleys in the winter time. In the summertime, they go up in the mountains. Right now I'm in Grand Teton. There's not a whole lot of bears around because they're up in the mountains. The snow has melted and they have transitioned from the valleys up to the mountains because there's more food in the mountains for them. There's more cover for them in the forest. The same goes for aquatic ducks or birds of prey that hunt over water. They're not going to be hunting over a frozen pond. So if the pond is frozen, you're looking in the wrong place. Another thing that coincides with these different seasons is maybe where the wildflowers are growing. If there's wildflowers, the bears will come and eat the wildflowers. Deer and elk also like wildflowers. So that would be a good place for you to look in the springtime when the wildflowers are growing, is in a wildflower field. The other thing you want to keep in mind is the moon phases. I know it's not a seasonal thing, but every other month we have a full moon. When we have a full moon, the animals are less active during the daytime. They're more active at night. So your chances of finding them in the daytime are a little bit harder. It's not impossible, but it's definitely harder. Another thing you have to keep in mind with seasons is the air temperature. If it's hot outside, you're typically not going to find animals in the wide open field in the middle of the day. It's too hot for them. They will be in the forest somewhere in the shade where it's cooler, and they possibly could come out into those fields in the early morning or in the afternoon when the temperature is cooler. Another thing that coincides with seasons is seasonal migrations of certain animals that might be prey to the animals that you're trying to photograph. Say you're in a coastal area, and like in Florida, they have the mullet run. It's a great place to photograph eagles and ospreys trying to eat the mullet. In Alaska, they have salmon that come up the rivers. It's a great place to photograph bears and also eagles that try to eat the salmon or the scraps from the bears. So knowing when the smaller animals are migrating in a certain area will give you some insight on where you should go look for the larger animals that are trying to eat them. If you're not sure how to find seasonal migrations of prey animals or smaller animals that your predators might eat, just do a simple Google search on the predator and what they eat. And then you'll find the information that you need to look for on Google. As far as if you're trying to find eagles, eagles eat fish. You just want to search the seasonal migrations of fish in the area that you're trying to photograph the eagles. And that'll give you some insight into when you should go look and where you should go look. Because it's not really a secret spot that fish are migrating up the coast. You typically can find that information. But if you Google where to find an eagle to photograph, you're probably not going to find much information other than some broad areas that you can go look. But it's still not as useful as finding the bait source or the fish source that the eagles might be eating. Some important things to look for when you're out walking around are animal scat or poop. That can be very useful to know if there's animals in the area. You can also tell how long ago they were there roughly by the condition of the scat. If it's dried out, it's been there for a while. If it's still moist, then it's fairly fresh and you know the animal has been in the area recently. The other thing you should be looking for when you're out walking around is animal tracks. Every animal has a very distinct footprint. You can tell what type of animal it is and roughly how long ago they were there just based off of their footprint. And now when you're looking at tracks, you don't want to use tracks in the mud as a reference to how long ago they have been there. The mud will actually preserve the track for much longer than it would if it was in sand or dirt. You typically want to look in areas where there is wet dirt or moist dirt because you'll get an accurate footprint of the animal, and you can also tell how long ago it was there roughly. If there's no dew in it from the morning dew, then it was after the morning dew, which means it was very fresh. If it's a road where there's cars driving down the road, if the animal tracks are on top of the tire tracks, then you know it was probably from that night or early in the morning before anyone has driven down that road. It's also important to know when the last time it rained was, because an animal footprint that has no rain in it or no drops of water had hit it means the animal was there after it rained. So say it rained last night, then you would know the track is super fresh because it has no rain in it. If the track has rain in it or it has water drops in the track, then you know the animal was there before it rained. You can look and see when the last time it rained was and tell roughly how long ago the animal was there. If you're tracking antlered animals like deer, elk, or moose, another important thing you should look for is signs where they've been scraping their antlers on the smaller trees. They do this in the spring and the fall. They do it in the spring to remove the velvet from their antlers. They do it in the fall when they're in the rut. It's a sign of marking their territory. They do it to make noise and agitate other bulls or bucks in the area. So this can be super helpful when you're trying to find bucks or bulls to photograph, because if you're in an area that has fresh scrapes on trees, then you know you're in the right place and you want to come back at a later time and try to photograph that area. The other thing that's important with scrapes on trees or rubbings on trees is you can tell how fresh they are based off the fact if the bark is dried out or the tree is dried out and it's old looking, then you would know it's an older scrape. If it's fresh and there's still pieces of bark hanging off of it, then again, you know you're in the right place. I have some video examples of scrapes or rubbings on trees. I think they were from elk. And that's another thing that you can tell by a scrape on a tree or rub on a tree. If it's on a larger tree, it was typically a larger animal. So a white-tailed deer or mule deer would scrape on a smaller bush or smaller twig, whereas an elk might scrape on a pine tree that's 1.5 inches around and rub the bark up this high because it's a bigger animal. If you're looking for antlered animals like deer, elk, or moose, you want to look for a scrape like this on the tree. This indicates that there are males, bucks, or bulls in the area if you're looking for elk or moose, which is what you want to take photos of. And this is fresh, it's recent. Due to the size of the tree, I'm going to say it's probably an elk that has done this. Here is another example. As you can see, all of these trees are scraped up. So I think there's either a couple of elk in the area or maybe just one that is removing the velvet from his antlers because it's springtime here. This is an elk track. You can see their hoofs are close together. That means they're walking. The tracks are also fresh because they're right down the middle of this dirt road. So if you were looking for elk, this would be a great place to come and look. They're obviously in this area. They've been here either this morning or last night. This is an example of a bear track. As you can see, his pad is right here and his claws are right there. Due to the size, I would say it's probably a black bear. And due to the fact that it's right down the middle of the road, there's no tire tracks on top of it. It also rained yesterday a little bit, and there's no rain in this. So I would know that that track is from last night or this morning after it rained. If it had rain in it, you would see little drops like this. If that was in the track, then I would know that the track was previous to the rain. If you're tracking bears, which is not really recommended, but you can do it. They also rub their back on trees where you'll see the bark is rubbed off a tree. They scrape trees with their claws, or you can look for their footprints, obviously. If you see an area that's frequented by bears, you probably don't want to go walking around too much looking for them because you don't want to walk up on them and surprise them. I have a full bear video. I'll attach it in the description below if you want to check that out. Go a little bit more in depth into photographing. If you're trying to photograph predator birds like owls, The best way to find an owl, in my opinion, or in my experience, is to find the food source, which goes for a lot of animals. If you find the food source, then you'll often find the predators follow. So if you're tracking owls or you're trying to photograph owls, you want to look in a place where there's a lot of small rodents, rats, mice, voles if you're after great gray owls. Looking along tree lines over an open field is a great place to look for owls, especially if there's a food source for owls, because they will often sit on the tree line and wait till they see something move or hear something and then swoop down into the field and get it. The same goes for eagles and ospreys. They'll often sit on the edge of a river or the edge of a lake up in a tree so they can see well over the body of water and they can actively hunt from sitting still. They don't need to actually fly around and hunt. The other thing you can look for when you're out walking around is game trails. A game trail looks a bit like a hiking trail, but it's a bit smaller, more narrow. The animals don't leave as big a footprint as humans do. So if you find a game trail that leads out into a field, you would know that that field might be an active area when the conditions are better for photographing. Probably the most important thing when locating animals is locating their food first. So start small, look for the food. If you find the food for the animal that you're trying to photograph, you will often find the animal in the same area. If you have any questions about tracking animals or locating wildlife, drop me a comment below. I'll help in any way I can. My goal in doing these videos is to pass along the information that I have learned. And when it comes to photography and wildlife, I know more about the wildlife than I do the actual photography. Next week, I'm going to take you out on the road with me, photographing here in the Tetons, do a behind the scenes video for some of the newer photographers that might not realize what goes into wildlife photography. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you get a notification when that video comes out. I really appreciate you watching this video and I hope you learned something about animals or tracking animals. Last week I made a video about shooting video in camera slow motion. I'll attach it right here and I'll see you over there.